are you a fan of Jericho? Or you appreciate the greatness that is Jericho? What are your thoughts
Yes.
on him as a performer?
Well, when he first came to ECW, I was totally unfamiliar with him. Back then, as busy as I was, teaching school, going to night school, preparing for medical school, wrestling all weekend, lesson plans on Sunday when I would get home. I didn't have a lot of time to watch stuff outside of that. But when he first came to ECW, he was a good-looking kid, well-built, athletic as hell. Then we got to become really good friends because we both share an affinity for Kiss. And, we started talking. That's like how we really sort of connected at first. And then I had the privilege of working quite often with him at ECW. And I loved working with him because he was so agile. And, again, at that time at Babyface, that's a good-looking kid, that all you had to do is just mount up a little bit of heat on him. And you knew he could explode something out of that into a comeback or, a high spot. And it made it really easy. When you're a heel and you have somebody like that can get sympathy and is so explosive and so athletic, you could make it work. And, Chris was fantastic to work with. He was a little snug, which I loved. That's how ECW was. And, he didn't fail to deliver in that department. But, he also had a great head on his shoulders for the business. So, when I'm talking or going to be working with somebody, I always want their input and help stimulate my thinking. As obviously he's going to know his repertoire far better than I would. Where does he want to plug in? Where does he see this particular spot or this particular point of the match going? And a lot of guys will say, "Well, I'll do whatever you want," or they just want to follow your lead. Chris always had great ideas. Chris was always willing to put forward, not in an obnoxious or abrasive way, in a collaborative way. To say, okay, well, how about if we did this or did that? And, I always say 2 heads are better than one. And when you had a kid that was as capable as Chris was, that, that kind of chemistry really lends well in the ring, and on camera. I loved working with Chris. I don't get a chance to see Chris or speak with Chris nearly as much as we used to. But I count Chris as a very good friend. And I've always been a big fan of his work since I got to know him in ECW.
Jericho is kind of, I guess you would say, the number one free agent in the game. If you think about it, obviously he's the current New Japan Pro Wrestling Intercontinental Champion, so there's got to be some sort of ties there. Obviously, he's got some dates left with them. He claims those dates would be in Japan, but you never know. Now it seems like he's opening his mind to possibly wrestling here in the States. That would be a huge, huge coup. You can kind of say they don't need him to wrestle at MSG. It's already sold out. You don't need him to wrestle, but still be a huge, huge coup for them. Now there's rumors going around saying, even Bleacher Report's reporting it, saying that Jericho is destined for Impact Wrestling. I kind of think it's all to do about nothing. I don't think that he would go there. Do you think that Jericho would end up in Impact Wrestling with this new shakeup and them kind of just, having open relationships with a lot of different wrestlers now?
I'd be surprised for the same reason that you just said. When you have your foot that, like I mentioned a few seconds ago, with the loyalty factor with Vince, I would think that if Jericho would at this point, move somewhere else and especially here in the States, that would pretty much seal his future dealings with WWE. Keep in mind that, even though the WWE may not have, big day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month plans with Jericho, the Chris Jerichos are the backbone, the spine that make up WrestleMania every year. That's why Vince has to constantly go to the Undertakers and the Steve Austins and the Bret Harts and the Chris Jerichos and the Mick Foley, because those are the name brands, the marquee names that are driving the sell or the draw in that pay-per-view. And that's a critical pay-per-view for them every year. It's sort of like when you go back and you look at, Boston came out with their first album, right, in 1976 and sold like a gazillion and one copies. And then the second one came out and sold like 6 million or 8 million, whatever. It was still an astronomical number, but because it didn't exceed what the first one did, it was considered a flop by standard. I think the same thing with WrestleMania. You can't go into WrestleMania and, not have a sellout. even if you have to pay for it. You can't go into WrestleMania and, have a lackluster show or not a lot of oomph and punch going into it. And every year Vince has to rely on those marquee names. So, even though he like I said, he doesn't have a lot day to day, week to week, month to month with someone like Chris, Chris is clearly a marquee name. And in many respects, probably even, at the top of that pack because he can still get in the ring and can still go. And as we saw with the match with Kenny Omega, can still deliver damn good performances. So I would think that the idea of him jumping ship, going somewhere else right now, unless there's something I'm unaware of, I don't see Impact Wrestling as having the money that it would take to get him over there, even if it was like one or two appearances. I just don't think, I agree with your assessment. I just don't see Chris as making that jump, because I don't see Impact being able to offer a big chunk of money to him for any protracted period of time. And I don't see Chris as going out and flushing the loyalty factor with WWE and Vince. So I'd be surprised, really shocked if that were to come to pass.